how artists and people and intellectuals can deal with what is happening nowadays in society? Do we have a role?
I think we have a role, but I will tell you my position, which sounds incredibly conservative and totally not hip. We live in the time when art starts to be substitute for many other things. And art message is instrumentalized very often in politics and social things, Russia with Pussy Riot, all those incredible important things which are all the time on the edge and all the time questioning the difference and the border between art and not art, reality and art. Protesters who produce their own slogans, and sometimes it's a lot of creativity in the slogans, and they use a lot of the language of visual languages that are so popular today. Plus, of course, the whole drama of image production. Everybody is making photos and distributing photos, and those photos are valuable or not valuable in every different case, and digital multiplication of artistic images and so on. That's why I think that my conservative position, with the risk, to be immediately blamed that it's even dangerous, is about keeping the aureatic and symbolical significance of artistic independence. That art and artists will be and still are produced when people feel specifically free. They can be politically engaged, they can be defending minorities, they can be, and political engagement could be of very different sides of the spectrum. But when an artist as an individual stops to be independent, to think by him or herself, to compare with the situation, to analyze and criticize the reality, what he and she is doing, it's already propaganda, but not art.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, as a person who grew up in a pretty, powerful culture of propaganda images production, which not all the time are art images, I think that still we keep some sensitivity where art starts to be only propaganda. When it's not instrumentalized or used or by chance, but when it's only definitely a propaganda. It comes to our territories with the invention of non-existing problems and with impossibility to see the reality of problems. We don't have artists who would deal seriously with the topic of ecology, for example. They would do things on this topic if they would be invited to an exhibition, preferably abroad of the country. There are very few people who seriously deal with minorities problem in the terms of art. I mean, to find that you have such a need and ability to find the visual language to talk about those problems. But they can easily be instrumentalized. That's why my conservative point of view, that art has to keep its own artiness, its own position as an independent, as a fifth column in the society, because I still believe that freedom of art production and presentation is one of very particular freedoms of contemporary world. And it's, of course, in a very complicated way can be destructed and changed. But at least artists, they have to know that they do a little bit like art theory, which sounds awful, I know, going back to the 19th century. But they have to keep a knowledge that, first of all, they're doing it because they are producing art.
Yeah, but in such a position, like, in Italy and I suppose in other countries in Europe, now the situation is so heavy and you really feel it on your skin. So how can you work without being somehow contaminated by what is happening in the society?
No, but you can't. You are absolutely, you are not even contaminated. You are involved. You live this life. Artists, they are citizens, first of all. But for me, the problem is that if art is produced on demand, on very political specific demand of the day, it has no time to be analytical, to be meaningful. It has no time to be produced properly, and it only servicing. That's why I think that one of the important elements is still somehow to keep understanding that art is not only servicing the news and the news programs on TV. That art has its own agenda, and this agenda is very much dependent on how and when you live, of course, because this is your existence as an artist and as a critic and as a curator. It's impossible to, disconnect those things. But first of all, you are doing art.
The last question, Iara, which I'm always considering nowadays, how can we do what we are doing properly in a world like ours nowadays, which is so much overwhelmed by images, by messages and communications and informations and photographs? And so how can we deal with all of this that we get over the social media, that we get every day?
I think that one of the difficulties that all of us have in the terms of overflowing of different images is exactly the problem that we started to get information much more visually, but we are not learning enough visual languages, different visual languages. You know, we know our own, we know our traditional, at least so to say national, and then European. We are still very Eurocentric in our understanding of images. I think we have to learn, I mean, in the long term, it has to be a different system of education which will devalue a little bit Eurocentrical vision of image production. You know, all those things about the author, all those things about the individual message, about the phenomenology, I think we still are there. And the world is producing images with very different attitude to images. Images, photos in China and Japan and Korea that people can upload somewhere, they produce with totally different idea than here in Europe. And we who feel hurt, you know, with this amount of photo images and different types of images, I think it's maybe because we still are incredibly Eurocentrical in our understanding what messages are for and about.
Whenever we select artists from China or India or these other countries, we usually select those artists that are using images the same way we do in Europe.
Yes, I think so. Of course, I mean, we select by recognition, not by really pioneering and discoveries. This is true, and we instrumentalize as well. But I think, you know, it's difficult to give an answer how to live and to deal with this incredible amount of image production. But on one hand, we have the classical traditional capitalist market which is trying to solve part of the problems, you know, nominating things as more important and less important. The ability to produce objects of desire, this is the main definition of how to select images. Intellectually, how to select images which are useful, so to say, practical level. But I don't know how to answer you. Unfortunately, I contaminate the world as well because I'm producing images and upload them sometimes, you know, in some social networks, which creates this illusion of connection with different people.
But so it is an illusion of connection, eh?
I'm not sure. I would not blame social networks as only an illusion. I think, again, it's one of the problems. You know, it depends very much. I'm born and I grew up in a huge city of Moscow. We saw each other like relatives, even in decades ago, not so often as people are doing it in smaller places, only because of a physical difficulty to visit your parents or your siblings or your close friends. Telephone talks were much more important. People were talking hours. So I never felt that communication and feeling related and feeling understood, it only happens when you watch people in their eyes. That can happen through logos very much, and even on distance. So I don't feel that social networking is so totally elusive. Of course, to deal with it, you need some knowledge. I mean, this one, again, another problem. You need to learn how to do it. You need to be selective. You need to know how to not to be, vanity submerged somehow, because, you see how many friends you can get, thousands of thousands, and this is producing, this is making your, so to say, circle of friends stupid, unnatural, and elusive. But if you are strict, you can deal with it with much more pleasure.